My name's Jason Creel, and today I want to give you 7 reasons why your lawn might not be as good as your neighbor's lawn. Stay tuned. I run a weed control and fertilization company, and so people pay me money to make their lawn look great. And oftentimes they compare it to their next door neighbor. I may lose a customer if the yard does not look as good as the neighbor, or I may gain further customers in an area if I have a great looking lawn because the neighbors want theirs to look as good as my customer. Well, you know what? Sometimes there are reasons, and you may be wondering, how come my lawn doesn't look as good? Let's talk about these reasons why your lawn might not be looking as good as your neighbor's, and maybe these will help you as you try to grow the best lawn possible in your given situation. So reason number 1 is this. Perhaps you live next door to somebody like Alan Hain, the lawn care nut, or maybe not him in particular, but somebody like him. You know, that guy that's out there mowing his grass 3 times a week. He's out there hand pulling weeds. I'm not saying that Alan does that, but you know what I'm talking about. You've got that retired guy who just loves his yard, and he's out there a fanatic about it. Everything in that yard is immaculate. So even if your yard looks good, you're thinking, my yard will never look as good as him because I just don't have that amount of time to put into it that he does. I know that I've had customers that live next door to somebody like that, and it makes my job difficult as a weed control and fertilization professional because they're comparing me with this guy who's out there all the time in his yard, and I'm just coming, you know, a certain number of times a year for the treatment. So let me illustrate it like this. You know, I live in Alabama. You know, Alabama, they've got a good college football team, and so good teams come to Alabama to play, and then they lose by 30 points. They go back and they say, how come our team's not any good? Well, it's not that the team's not any good, it's just you played like a championship level team. So if you live next to championship yard material, you may have a hard time measuring up even if your yard's in good shape. Reason number 2, one of the key factors I see in one yard looking good versus another looking good is the actual mowing habits of the homeowner or whoever the mowing professional is. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, oftentimes the frequency of mowing is the biggest difference maker. For me, I can do the same lawn treatment schedule on 2 different properties, but if one guy is mowing his weekly versus somebody else mowing theirs bi-weekly, sometimes it makes a huge difference in the quality of the lawn. Not only from the amount of weeds, because you know a lot of weeds don't like lawn mowers, and frequent mowing and denser, thicker turf helps keep the weeds out. But also, just when you're mowing more frequently, it's likely that you're taking less of the grass blade off each time, causing less, stunning of the grass, if you will. General rule, people say not to take more than 1/3 of the grass blade off in a single mowing. So the more frequent you mow, especially if you're trying to keep your lawn nice and low and tight, which some people want with certain grass types, then the more frequent you mow it, probably the better. I will say on that too, I mean, some people who want just an immaculate lawn, they don't want a big 0-turn mower on their property. They want to use a push mower. I mean, yeah, it's true, 0-turn mowers can leave some tracks in the yard. They're heavy and that sort of thing. You can eliminate some of the patterns that it makes by switching up your mowing pattern each time. But to me, if I'm mowing grass for a living, perhaps the lawn would look slightly better if done with a push mower. But when you're trying to make money, it's not, you can't be out there pushing all day. But if you're a homeowner and you're trying to have an immaculate lawn, then I can see the argument for pushing versus using a riding mower. Number 3, your watering patterns may also have an effect. I have customers in my area that I know I'm dealing with, and I'll see both cases where they're watering too much or not enough. Now, obviously, if you're watering not enough, you're going to see some browning of the turf. We get here in the South, we get these hot, dry summers, and if they're not watering, then the turf will really start to show some drought stress, and it's going to cause some problems. Not necessarily going to kill the grass unless we get a fairly extreme drought, but it can make it weak and definitely take away from the green color of the lawn. But also, I see people regularly who are watering their grass too much, and that can lead to some fungus problems and particular weeds that I notice that really like wet areas. So if you're talking about nudge sedge, kalinga, doveweed. You know, these are some that I deal with that I notice when the yard stays wet, it can lead to those weed problems. As like I said, also fungus problems. If you have an area that doesn't drain well in your yard, probably going to be more likely to have weeds and more likely to have a fungus problem in that area. And this can vary from region to region, but we try to encourage people to water less often but for longer periods of time. So instead of running that sprinkler 10 minutes a day, you know, every day, and maybe that would be something, you know, to have a little brief shower on your flower beds, but on your lawn, you're keeping it moist, you know, to water less often. So maybe even just once a week, but soak it for 45 minutes, you know. And for here in the South, like for us, sometimes if we go really dry, then and are not getting any rain, because I'm thinking, you know, if we water it one time a week with irrigation and then it rains once a week, we should be good. Well, let's say you go 2 or 3 weeks with no rain. Well, then maybe you need to turn it on twice a week, especially if you're trying to keep that green color. Now, if you're trying to mow it really short and keep it real tight, then, you know, more water is probably going to be necessary. And obviously this is going to vary depending on what area you're in, but I'm kind of basing on where I'm at in Alabama with these hot, humid, dry summers. Reason number 4 your lawn may not look as good as your neighbors is, you know, just the nutrition is not there. So you don't have a good fertilizer program set up. I mean, you know, the nitrogen in that fertilizer helps the grass turn green. And the tricky thing about this is it's going to be some specific needs depending on the type of grass you have. But, you know, where I'm at, I'm dealing mostly with Bermuda grass. The people who put more nitrogen on the Bermuda typically are going to have a greener yard. The ones who use less nitrogen are going to have not as green of a yard. So if your grass is not getting that proper nutrition, it's not just the nitrogen, it's other things too. But if the actual plant is not healthy, then obviously it's going to affect the overall look of the lawn, even if you're watering it properly and mowing it regular and taking care of all the other things we're talking about. That fertilizer makes a huge difference. I know sometimes, you know, people like to bag their lawn, you know, where the clippings actually can return some helpful nutrition back to the soil. So sometimes if you're cutting it frequently and there's not a lot of clippings, you know, mulching could be a good option for you. The 5th reason your lawn may not look as good as your neighbors is just the soil type. You know, I go to these neighborhoods sometimes and they're building houses as fast as they can possibly build them. They all look the same on these, you know, these little 1/4 acre lots. And when you see them, they're building them so fast, they do very minimal dirt work, and then they throw the sod down on top of this rocky, terrible soil. Okay, so what happens? Will it grow? Well, yeah, it'll grow, but it's not gonna grow as well as it would if you were in a better area. So if your soil has problems, and you can send off for a soil sample and they'll give you recommendations based on the readings from your soil in your specific lawn. But if you have terrible soil, it can make it difficult to have a healthy, lush lawn. Just like growing a garden, you know, the better soil is going to lead to better crops. Well, the same is true in your lawn. There's some things you can do to improve the quality of the soil. Like for instance, here in my area, a lot of times the soil is too acidic, and so we add granular enhanced limestone in the wintertime to help try to raise the pH of that soil to make it at a level that the grass is better suited to grow in. When the soil is too acidic, what happens is it can lead to certain types of weeds that like that acidic soil, and also it can prohibit the actual turf from taking in the nutrients that are available. So what does that look like? Maybe you fertilize the lawn, but the lawn doesn't respond as well as you think it should. What could be a situation where your soil quality is so bad that the grass is not able to use the nutrients in that fertilizer. Number 6 reason your lawn might not be as good as your neighbor is your grass type. I see this a lot of times. Talked to a lady just the other day. She said, you know, we had 2 big oak trees in our yard. We moved here. We weren't familiar with Bermuda grass. We sodded with Bermuda grass, and of course it didn't live. Why? Too much shade. Had the wrong grass type. If you've got a lot of shade and you put Bermuda grass out, you can water it correctly, use proper fertilizer, have great soil, but it's just the wrong grass type for that particular situation. So you want to understand what is the ideal grass type, not only for the amount of sunlight I'm getting, but for the region I'm in. You know, for instance, where I live, Some people have St. Augustine, but it's not exactly ideal because we're a little bit further north. You know, you see it all the time in Florida. But if we get a cold winter, it can really set back that St. Augustine coming into spring. Here in the warm season grasses, you know, if you've got significant amount of shade, if you got too much shade, you're just pretty much not going to be able to grow grass. But if there's, you know, some sunlight, but it's still a good bit of shade, then we recommend people use some type of zoysia grass because that is the most shade tolerant option here. Now, if you've got full sun, then Bermuda's fine, or centipede. There's other options you can use that'll be fine in the sun. So you got to pick a right grass type for your specific situation. And if you inherited a yard that, you know, is going to be too expensive to resod and you're just stuck with the grass type you have, you know, there may be ways you can slowly convert it over to another grass type, but sometimes that can be the reason your yard is not as nice as others. You just simply don't have the ideal grass type for your situation. The number 7 reason your lawn might not look as good as your neighbor's is you may have a problem with insects or fungus or something like that. I mean, there's something going on with the lawn that needs to be treated. So for instance, we deal with chinch bugs, armyworms, grubs, things like that can cause damage to a lawn and significantly affect the appearance of your lawn. Same thing if you have a fungus problem. It can make big brown spots in your lawn that take quite a while to recover. So if you know that's something you deal with in your lawn, it may be something you want to get ahead of with a fungicide to try to prevent that from happening or try to minimize the damage once you do see it. I'm Jason Creel, and I help lawn care business owners be successful in their lawn business, and at the same time homeowners benefit by following me on YouTube to learn how to have a better looking lawn. If this video has been helpful for you, I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel. Let me hear from you in the comments. Tell me about your lawn, what makes it great or not so great if you're having difficulties, and check out these suggested videos popping up for you now. Thanks a lot.